You know, I feel like I talk about myself so much, but I never really talk about myself. On one level, I criticize myself for being so narcissistic, but then again, you know, the ARC, the arc element there, you have to manifest any word that has that involved in it, from narcotics to being narcissistic. An arc is usually involved in one of those things. If it has your letters in it, at one point or another, you've been that anarchy, anarch, you've been everything. But that's okay. That's okay. Um, because sometimes I'll tell a story and I'll think I'm telling a cool story. People will get a big kick out of it and like it, and find out that a lot of people are shocked or disgusted, thought that was very sad and tragic, and that's not the way it happened for me. And vice versa. You know, I'll tell a story that I think is just terribly, you know, disturbing and worrisome, and the person will just move along and go, yeah, that's happened to me before, and just not pay it any mind. And I realize that's just part of life. That's the one thing that keeps me grounded, at least in knowing that we all do have these differences, and these differences, in a sense, make us all the same. It's like, okay, good, they do have that one thing, you know, like I have that one thing. And the one thing I don't reference very often or talk about that is very, very integral and important to all of this that I'm going through, that everyone is going through, is in regards to, quote unquote, in regards to my depression. Now, what am I talking about when I say my depression? Are you saying that you're still depressed and you're suffering from depression? No. I still have bouts of depression or being depressed. I'm talking about the war. I'm talking about the depression for me. And that occurred, I would say roughly, of course, you know, remember the good old days when we were oh so miserable. It's a French quote, but looking back now, it seems like it was such a great time. But looking back at what I was writing, what I was thinking, what I was saying, I remember telling my ex this over 10 years ago, and since that time, so much has changed. I was, I was brilliant. I was absolutely brilliant. I was alive, and I was depressed. And the things that came out of my mouth, and the ideas, and the social commentary that I had, were brilliant. If I were to pick up some of my notes, and I wrote so much, I have books upon books upon books of just writing, and I'll just pick out a sentence, and I'll be like, my God, I didn't write that. I had to steal that idea. The social commentary that I would have, because I was in that state of depression, and I kind of knew it was happening, but I didn't realize to the extent that it, in retrospect, would seem so brilliant. And I would say to Wendy, and she kind of understood, she kind of saw what I was saying, because she would read some of my books. I said, you know, it's really weird to say this, but I feel like I was smarter then than I am now. I'm more, like, educated to life now. I'm more mature now. I understand responsibility now. I was out of control then. But when it comes to really looking at things in a brutal manner and dissecting them and knowing the reality of it, I was a fucking genius in my 20s. Reckless and wild, but oh, so perceptive. So self-aware. But I can't remember exact moments. All I remember is the blackness. It's as if out of a safety mechanism inside of me, or an outside element, has wiped that away, because that is something you cannot have, at least in the darkest of the moments. And this has been something echoed by other people who have suffered this type of depression. The memory of it is too much for you to handle, even in your best of moods. In fact, when I was coming off of opiates, off Vicodin, a doctor told me a quote that I thought was brilliant because it was true, but it applied to my depression. It applied to my depression. And he said, when you're coming off of like, it's going to feel like you're dying. You do. You feel like you're dying. It's a living hell. I don't mean it just like, ow, ow. You feel like you're dying. Your body goes into a shock. Your mind attacks you. It tries to convince you you are dying. He says, but you'll make it through that. And once you do, you'll wish you did die. And that is exactly how I felt with my depression. And that's something I don't share with people, because then I worry that they will think I'm in depression or suicide risk. I would make observations that when I told them to people, I mean, nowadays no one pays any attention to what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like straight out of the Word of God shit, you know. And I would have audience that would just stand there. I didn't realize, I think they were just shocked to hear someone say this, because I was opening up in such a brutally emotional way. They didn't know what to do. It wasn't like they were just being polite to listen. It was more like they were like, oh my God, look. You know, as Martin Sheen says in Apocalypse Now, they had never seen a man so broken up and torn apart. And why? Why was this? I used the analogy of the Santa Ana winds and brush fires, because that's exactly how it felt, and that's how it was. Just a raging, metastasizing brush fire, burning through the hills that I called my soul. And nothing was going to stop it. No love, no water, nothing. Until the wind stopped, the depression stopped, the blowing, raging wind, or the fuel had finally all burned away. And I remember, as if it was really happening, looking at my soul once the smoke cleared, and expecting to see rubble. I'm supposed to go back now and collect pictures, old souvenirs that still exist in the ash, right? And I remember, as if it really happened, looking and seeing a moonscape. There was nothing left. Nothing. The shock of that put me into a deeper, not depression, but something I fear more than depression, which a lot of people out there don't know about. You should look it up. It's called anhedonia. Anhedonia. And I understand why they don't want to talk about it. And there's no doubt I suffer from it. That's why I don't have any restrictions on what I do in life to stay alive. Anhedonia is essentially where you have used up so much of your serotonin, all the chemicals, the happy, the sad chemicals, that you're empty, you're dried. You can feel no emotion. You are zombied. You will never smile at a wedding because you can't feel that emotion. You won't even cry at a funeral because you don't understand sadness anymore. You have spent all of those fuels that you have that were supposed to last you 80 years in a very brief amount of time. And it's a true emotion, and you feel just bland. And you realize this. You realize, my God, I'm not sad, I'm not happy, I'm nothing. In other words, there's no use to live after that, and not until you make it through it all. And I made myself a promise. See, when I was really deep into my depression, I did not want to make the rash decision of just putting a gun in my mouth and pulling the trigger. I had seen too much of that. Whether it was in a movie, or it was a friend, or, a biography or something. No. I was aware my life was important. And as one woman once said, she's a writer, she said, I wasn't feeling sorry for myself in the sense I wanted to kill myself because I hated myself. I loved myself. I was trying to spare myself from the pain. That's so true. So true. You're not trying to hurt yourself because you hate yourself. It's you and me. We got to get out of here. Let's jump now. There's a bond. There's a connection you find within yourself. And you come to an agreement. And as I said, 99% of the suicide took place over years for me. The actual act of pulling the trigger or slitting the wrist or jumping off the building or whatever method I chose to do, that was like a formality. That was like not even important. I didn't really care about that part. But we had to make damn sure we were doing the right thing. I mean, this was serious investigative work. So I promised myself, when this is done, because I know it will pass, if, just as that doctor had said, I thought I was going to die, and once this is done, if I still have the feeling of, my God, that was so terrible, the thought of that experience alone makes me not want to live anymore because I'm so frightened by it, to know it exists, then I will indeed do it. And I came very close to that, and have come very close to that. And I lived my life that way. Very destructive. People say, hey man, make sure to live your life like there's no tomorrow. Oh, I have. And I've died years ago. I lived many days in one day. And I don't have any regrets about that. People think I'm talking about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. No, I'm talking about emotions. I'm talking about love. I'm talking about hate. I'm talking about staying up all night. No, I haven't traveled the whole world, literally. But pack your bags, I'm ready to go now. Where do you want to go? Let's do it. I'm down. I was always down when others were not. And I conducted myself that way because there was a reality to it. What? He's ready to do it whenever. The guy has an I don't give a fuck attitude, but he does give a fuck. That's what's so crazy. It was really crazy. Now clearly, with my studying of this at the time, and not having any idea of anything regarding metaphysical or spiritual connections, there is clearly a trigger that is hit. A switch that goes on. Something connects you with the other side. Now, I don't know if it's the suicide element. I believe it to be, from what I've observed, it's that lonely one with yourselfness. We are all one, people say. You're not getting it. Yeah, I understand that. Let's all hold hands across America. No, it's about being alone. All one. To literally put yourself into a jail cell with no food and no water, with only yourself. And you don't know when you're getting out. That's when you find yourself in ways that I don't really even like talking about. But I realize that's the goal that gets that engine running for you, isn't it? It is, isn't it? You know damn well you would have never, none of this would have ever existed. Ignorance is bliss is the understatement of the year, Don. You know that. The greatest gift you were ever given was depression, and yet the thing that haunts you the most, you said, I don't want it to come back. And I didn't think it would come back. When I met Wendy, we discussed this a lot. She knew about my wars, and she was very frightened that I was going to go into some sort of, whatever. She knew I was a wild child. We had friends dying left and right. And I told her, and I meant it. I just said, I don't know how to tell you this, but even though I'm in love with you and you're in love with me, and we found something we both thought did not exist, and we both proved ourselves idiots. I don't think there's anything left to burn. And what I meant by that was, there can't be a fire like that ever again. There just can't be. There's nothing to burn anymore. So don't worry about that. Now, when that all went down the second time in Monterey, I would agree with that. That the hillsides just weren't as lush as they were when I was younger. But this time around, I tended to come face to face with the depression in an angry, I can't fucking believe this is happening again. How is this happening to me again? It was beyond my control. At this point, I did have large debates with God, and didn't realize at the time I probably really was having them, because I hadn't made that connection yet. This was my fuck God phase. Fuck him. He does not exist. Then he's blowing it, because if he was smart, I said, if he was smart, he wouldn't let people like me or the other ones kill ourselves, because we have nothing left. We literally walk in front of guns, hoping you'll pull the trigger. Why? Well, we don't want to do it ourselves. There might be a technicality. There might really be a hell. So will you do it for me? I mean, we loved it and we meant it. We meant it. In 2008, when I had my near death, I didn't even think about it when I said to the doctors, I want to sign a DNR first, though. Like, it didn't even cross my mind that what I was saying was, they're telling me how they're going to try to save my life and do their best job, and I'm telling them, make sure I sign the do not resuscitate. I don't want to miss this opportunity. And I said it so nonchalantly. It occurred to me days later what I was really saying to them and how they reacted to it. They were just like, in shock. And it was a beautiful moment. Why? Because I was right. What? I did it without even thinking about it. I know that sounds like a bad thing, but it wasn't like I was programmed, but I was. It was a natural reflex. All those years of pain and me telling myself, if I get the chance, I'm going to jump. Like it is just a natural sense to do it. And that's what happened. That's what happened. You were told you might die, and your immediate instinct, although you hadn't been depressed for years, was, remember, if you have the chance, take it. But the things I was saying back then were just amazing. And back then I was working in the entertainment industry. I worked in adult films. I mean, it was everything people say that they are, but they're not. I mean, we knew rock stars. I sold drugs. I did drugs. We knew all the best people. I always got into clubs, and I'm not even that attractive, so that made it even better. I got by because I was cool, not because I was hot, not because I was rich, just because I was down with the cool folks. How cool is that? You know? How cool is it to be the guy that gets to be on Oprah, that snaps his fingers and gets invited on Oprah? Why? To defend a guy who wrote a book that was on the #1 bestsellers list for 3 or 4 months, but was so wild in its tales, people didn't believe it. It was too crazy for them. 1,000,000 little pieces, because that's what he was left in, 1,000,000 little pieces. And it was Wendy who told me, you got to read this book. Why? She understood me, man. She understood me. It says things that no one else says except you, Dawn. That's what she said to me. And we weren't talking at the time. She says, it's saying things that only you say. You've got to read this book. So she sent it to me, and sure enough, my God, he knows the code. That's kind of what I thought. This motherfucker knows. He's been there. You all know that. There's something in your lives that no one knows the codes to. And this guy was spitting out codes that I didn't even understand. I couldn't tell if he had a great way of explaining it or if he really, really was there. No, I think he really, really was there. So then they start attacking him. Now I realize in retrospect the reason for this was something was happening.